Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to talk about Koha's built-in self-check system and some of the crazy things you can do with it. But first, all right, I'm George Williams. I am the Next Search Catalog Coordinator at Northeast Kansas Library System.
And I'm Christopher Brannon with the Coeur d'Alene Public Library and the Cooperative Information Network.
And Christopher has, they've always, at his library, they've always used a third-party self-check system, but Christopher's working to replace that with some changes and modifications he's made to the Koha built-in self-check system, and he's going to show us some of those today. So what you've done so far, what I've seen, looks really awesome. So let's tell everybody how you did it.
Yeah. So we've done a video before about self-check, and I've talked about why we went a different route rather than using Koha's. Ever since we jumped on to Koha, I'll just recap what I've shared. Ever since we jumped on to Koha, the self-checkout is great. I'm glad that Koha provides a self-checkout, but it's really designed for a single library, not for a consortium, in that for the self-checkout system, you have to log in as the user or branch that it is going to function as. And then patrons can log in, do their checkouts, and log out, which is really good for a single branch. But the user that you create to log in as that, basically the branch that's doing the circing, is tied to that branch. So all circulation is tied to that particular branch. So they're getting all the stats. And if you're a library that wants to collect the stats of all your checkouts, that's not good. So that was one of the hurdles that I didn't like. And so I went with a third-party self-check that someone started a while back. I forget his name. It's been a while since I played with it. We've used it for 12 years. He stopped maintaining it. I kind of took the reins a little bit and added supplementary improvements to the self-check. I can't remember where it is, but if you Google open source self-check, you'll come across it. If my name is tied to it, that's the one I worked with. But so we used that for 12 years, and that's gone well. That self-check depends on setting up the service in some way, and to where you can access web pages. And basically the instructions on it were to install a self-service web server on the machine itself called WAMP, W-A-M-P. So I've used that for years. We recently had a computer failure, and I was trying to do a recent install of that, and WAMP has become a little bit more complicated than I like for setup. A little more hurdles that I have to jump through in order to get the thing functioning, and it just wasn't worth it to me. So I decided, I've been putting off playing with Koha's self-check for a while now, so decided to give that a go again. What's that?
It's about 12 years you've been putting off working with Koha self-check.
Yes. I mean, I've tinkered with it on the side because obviously we've done videos on it, and I've done some presentations on some improvements for it. But I wanted to go a little bit further, and I've worked with the community a little bit, going into the Bugzilla, talking about some of the pitfalls that we run into as a consortium with it, and how the login needs to be improved. So there's a bug there. I'll have that here, but that's really not making a lot of progress. I mean, there's discussion, but no progress in coming up with a good solution.
Right.
So we've worked with I've worked with the Koha Self Check as is, trying to get it to work to where it's not cumbersome for our staff, not cumbersome for our patrons. And our patrons have been used to the self check that we've been using for 12 years. And when I put them side by side, nobody was touching the Koha Self Check because they just weren't familiar with the interface. So I decided, well, I'm going to do some things about that. Plus, I'm going to tackle the login issue. What we've ended up doing, first of all, this is pretty much what the self check looks like. There might be a few modifications on here from previous mods that I've told folks about. I added a keypad for a touch screen, and that's in a previous video. So I'm really happy with that. That's been pretty solid. But the first thing that I needed to work on was the login. Like I said, if we set up the auto login, and if we look at, let me go back in here. Let's look at circulation self-checkout. So if you go into circulation, admin.
So this is the reason that we don't use the auto login, is because I have like about 6 libraries using the self-check, and if you set up the auto login, it ties, whenever you go to the self-check module, it logs in to that login. And if you've got these working at 6 different libraries, you're going to have all of, if you're at the library at Sabetha Middle School and it auto logs into some generic auto login account for self-check, then Sabetha Middle School isn't going to know what their circ is. All of their circ is going to appear as if it was happening at wherever the auto login is. Right. And it's going to follow the rules of the library where the auto login is the account holder. Exactly. And so if my library at Sabetha Middle School, where the books only check out for a week, is using the same auto login as Richmond Public Library, where things check out for 3 weeks, then the circulations aren't going to, there's no, it just doesn't work in a consortium to use the auto login.
Right.
And for that reason, Sabetha Middle School has its own login to the self-check system, and all of this auto login stuff in Koha becomes completely useless. It would be much better if the auto login could be tied to a URL that's related to self-check at this branch, self-check at that branch, and each branch were able to have its own auto login. That would be a huge improvement for me for Koha self-check system.
Yeah.
If it could be, if the auto login could be set up in the library administration or in the circulation rules, or just somewhere where it didn't have to be system-wide, it could be on a branch-by-branch basis. That would help us a lot.
Right.
But so, you've overcome that.
Yes, we've overcome that.
And it was easy, right?
No.
It was easy and simple, and it took you 5 minutes, right?
No, and this solution has been around for a while. It's just, it involves back-end stuff. It involves Apache stuff. It involves support vendor stuff, in our case, since we don't self-maintain. And I don't like the complication of that. Not every library is going to have the luxury of being able to do this, which is frustrating. it's one thing to be able to set this up in your system preferences, but then when you have to go on the back end of things and deal with things outside of Koha, that's where things can get a little bit more complicated, and you really have to know what you're doing, or you have to have a support vendor that knows what they're doing. Hopefully you have support vendors that know what they're doing. But essentially what's happening here, okay, if you have multiple libraries, the auto login is kind of off the shelf. You can't utilize that because you're going through one branch for all that circulation. You really don't want that, and so you'll basically need to turn the auto login off and have every library manually log in.
Which is what we do.
Problem with that is everybody has to log in every morning, and those self-check machines have to have keyboards. Now, some libraries are just fine with keyboards. Our libraries, we use touch screens, so we don't have keyboards and mice sitting out. That's a problem, and so manually logging in is not a good option for us. So the workaround for this is, and it took me a while to wrap my head around this, but finally got this worked out to where, okay, I have a default login. This particular user is tied to a specific branch. I don't want libraries using this particular login. I have a password set. What I've done is I've created a login for each branch that wants to use the self-check. They all have the same password as the default user. And our vendor, in this case, Bywater Solutions, has set up on Apache. We set this thing up that we've defined, okay, these are the branches, and this is the branch code that we're going to use. We add a prefix to the login so that, if it's Coeur d'Alene Public Library, we add core dash and then our self-check URL.
Okay.
And anytime Apache runs into that, what it does is it changes the username to the username for that particular branch. It leaves the password alone, so the password stays the same.
Right.
And
that does sound complicated.
It will log them in. Yes, it requires some trickery. I would have no idea how to implement on my own. So fortunately, Lucas was very helpful in that process. It would be nice if in the branches you could define, you could specify which user to use for the auto login for self-check. And if that branch code is included with the self-check, it's going to replace the user login with that branch's user, keep the password the same, or whatever, however they choose to deal with that. But it seems like that could be done. It's still being done on the URL. Whether we're doing it via the workaround on Apache, or if Koha were to incorporate that with the branches somehow.
Right.
So it seems to be a moot point. The consortiums have got to do what they've got to do. In our case, I know some of the argument is that, a person could go up on the URL if you got that on the URL, well, they could just change the branch if they wanted to. Well, we hide all that stuff, so it's like it's moot for us. And the workaround has it in the URL anyway, so having that on the Koha side in preferences isn't going to make the problem any worse. So that's where I stand with that. So that's how we've worked around this issue for login. What we end up with is being able to, it goes right to the login screen. Now, I have done some modifications, like I said, in the past. I've masked the input on here. I've added the keypad. I've stripped down some things. I've rerouted links so that people aren't navigating away from self-check. But there are a few things that that were standing out as I was playing with this. And here's today's real modifications that we're going to play with. One thing I've noticed in 2411, I had this please enter your card number and then these lines next to it and then the submit button next to it. So it was all in line.
Right,
And
it
with
used to be in one line.
Yeah, with 2411, they changed some things. I went in, made some adjustments, got it all in line again. And then, I don't know, a week or two ago, another security release or something came out, another patch came out, and it broke it all again. It's like, well, this isn't fun.
The regression in the patch, probably, yeah.
So I decided, I've been tinkering with this idea for quite a while. I liked the interface that we had on the old third-party system, which was, it just said scan your card or click the keypad and key in your key number if you don't have your card, which was really nice. Nothing else complicated about the login. So I thought I was going to recreate that here. So what I have done, there are a few modifications. I'm not going to go into all of the stuff that the previous modifications I've gone over. Those things still hold. But what I've done is, first off, I am going to remove all the headers and unwanted regions that I don't want on that.
So all the navigation stuff, you don't really need that on your self-check machine.
Yeah, I don't need the header. I don't need the links. I don't need any of that stuff. So I told it to hide all that stuff. It's hiding the legend. This right here, the please enter your card number. That's the legend.
Right.
And I can't remember if that's built in or if that was something that I added. I think it might have been something added, but I'm not sure. But anyways, I'm hiding all that stuff. And then I'm also hiding if this is the main form, the login screen, I'm hiding the button and and so let's see here. Let me just click save on that. And
which system preferences are those that govern? Because there are separate CSS and JS.
This is for self-checkout.
So self-checkout.
Yeah, self-checkout. So it's SCO user CSS or SCO user JS. And right now I'm just tinkering with the CSS. And so if I refresh with that change, this is what I'm left with.
Right, very simple.
Yeah. So now my next goal is I want to hide this, but still have it, the input box. I want the keypad still, but I want to move it over to the side here where it makes more sense. I want to get rid of this white background from the header, and I want to change the background with instructions. So that had to happen over on JS. If I just hid that input box, for whatever reason, it wasn't getting input when it was hidden. I know, and I could probably tinker with this a little bit more, but this I was able to work around. But my initial tests with hiding it was proving that I couldn't input into it and keep focus on it. So what I ended up doing is taking care of that in jQuery in other ways. And so what I've done, so I'm looking for this main form. So anytime that we're on this main form, I'm making these adjustments. Basically, I am adding the background to the screen. So this is going to include an image that I've saved in Koha that includes a graphic and instructions. I mimicked the open source self-check that we were using, so it may look familiar. You can have it be whatever you want. You can have it have whatever graphic that you want. you can really spice that page up with this background. So whatever you want to do is up to you. I just mimicked something that our patrons have been familiar with for 12 years.
Right.
I also wanted a keypad only layout, meaning I wanted that little button, but I didn't want the input box. And so what I've done here is I've told it to not have a border on that input box, and I gave it an opacity of 0. So I wanted it to hide, but if I used hide, or if I used hidden, or display none, I wasn't getting any input on that. So I decided to just make it invisible. And that box that it was in was a half screen size area with this medium 6, and so I just made this a medium 12, so it spanned the full screen,
Right.
so that I could move that login over to the right of the screen. So I want that all that information shifted to the end of that display rather than over on the left hand side. It was just where people were used to it.
Right.
I think, well, actually this is the opacity here. I'm sorry. This one. Oh, this one here. This one is for that white field.
Oh,
so
okay.
So basically, that white background. So that div, or whatever it is, had this white background, had a border. I just made sure it didn't have any border, and I made that invisible. This is the one. This is the patron ID. This is what addresses. This is the ID for that input box.
Right.
And this is where I made it invisible. So
Okay.
I gave it an opacity of 0. And then I wanted to make sure that that box always had focus, because if somebody tapped somewhere else, it would take the focus away from that, and anything they scanned, or if you have a keypad or whatever keyed in, it wasn't going in it. So I wanted to make sure it always stayed focused on there. So I just said anytime anybody clicks on the document anywhere, to put that focus back on that field, that invisible
Right. And
field.
you've got this set up mostly on computers with touchscreens, right?
Yes. But I mean, if you have a keyboard and you're keying this in with the keyboard, you want to be able to have that focus in that field as
Right.
well.
Right.
So the other modification, let's see here, no, I think everything else is just about the keypad. The keypad, I've removed the links and clutter here. Some of the stuff I can get rid of since it's no longer visible. I also changed some patron privacy just in pages in general, with removing last names, or removed a bunch of redundancy. I also duplicated the keep in the focus on the item checkout page on there, because you could click on different tabs, and I'll show that where you could lose that focus. So I've replicated that focus on that input box as well. I've masked the input so people can't look over your shoulder and see what the card number is, things of that nature. So
Okay.
so those are previous modifications, but this was the main part, just removing that input box, moving stuff over, and then changing the background. So let's save that, and we will refresh, and now this is what the self-checkout looks like. So a lot cleaner. We're not dealing with headers. We're not dealing with links that people shouldn't be clicking. The only thing on the screen that you can click is this keyboard. Otherwise, if you click anywhere else on the screen, that invisible text box, which is right here, if I click on it, it's wanting to fill that in. It's there, And so you may deal with that. And, if I can find a better way to hide that without the opacity, I'll just see if I can figure that out. But for now, it's not there. It's not evident. I may want to move it away from the keypad because if somebody mistaps, they might hit that and go, "What is this?"
Right.
So, but we still have the keypad. People can still key in what they want here. But otherwise, that box is there. I can key it in. I don't have my card with me right now, but I'll just key it in on my keypad right now. And I'm in. And then it looks like pretty much the same self-checkout that everybody's used to in Koha, except I have removed that header. So the header is gone. There was no need. I didn't need to brand it, and it gave more real estate to the screen. So,
and I imagine that most of the machines that you have this running on touchscreens, you don't even have the Firefox controls. It's just done full screen, right?
right. So this is what people are going to see.
Right. So they don't see anything other than just the interface.
Yeah. And so here's that input box. And as I said, I have that other control there that maintains the focus on this. So if somebody does decide, oh, I want to look at the holds or the charges or whatever screen they're on, it still maintains that.
As soon as they click on something, it goes back. Yeah.
Yeah. So because without that, if I click on here and I start scanning stuff, nothing's happening.
Do patrons have an option of keying in barcode numbers?
Oh, yeah.
So if
well, let's see here with a keyboard, yes, but
you don't have that number pads.
We don't have a keypad there. People have to scan the actual item, so okay. Less mistakes that way.
Right.
So that's my modification, my current modification. I like this. It's a lot cleaner. And like I said, you can change this graphic to whatever you want. I just mimicked every single element on the old self-check, made this have a little bit of an animation just like the old self-check did. And so nobody is the wiser that this is a different self-check.
Right.
And so, one of the things that you and I have talked about, I want to go a step further in this eventually, maybe get rid of this little button and just change the instructions to tap anywhere. If you tap anywhere,
right,
it's going to bring up that keypad and allow you to key in. Now, a couple things come to mind with that. If I do that, am I going to be able to maintain that focus on that? So maybe what I have to do is bring up that keypad and then bring that focus back on that box, because the keypad itself doesn't need to have a focus any specific place. If you click a button, it's going to put this information in that box, and then when you click the check box, it's going to move all that information over to that input box, that hidden input box. So I shouldn't have a problem with that. The other aspect that we talked about was, okay, what if you do have keyboards and not touch screens? So one of the things I may work on there is having some sort of key input. So it'll say tap anywhere for keypad, or you can change the instructions to say tap the space bar or tap something specific in order to bring up the keypad.
Right.
And then I have to make sure. I can't remember. I don't think I have. Yeah, see, I don't have a manual. Well, let's see here. Okay, thinking about this, we had this discussion, and I'm realizing there is no reason to bring up the keypad. If you have a keyboard, that input box maintains focus. There's really no reason for a person with a keyboard to bring up that keypad.
Right.
So
for me, the issue I would have with the on-screen keypad is that some of my libraries have alphabetical characters in their card numbers. So that would not be an option to use a 10-digit keypad.
No, yeah, exactly. And when we got onto Koha, we had a lot of old cards that do have some uh, letters in them.
Yeah,
I mean, we're trying hard to phase those out, but yeah, it does alienate those particular patrons. But those patrons, we they would, if they ran into that, we were happy to replace their card for free.
right,
Um, but if you do have to have characters, that keypad is completely designed in um, in the jQuery. All of this right here,
right,
the keypad modal, defines the layout and the keys that you have there. So if you have specific characters that you just need, not every character, you can create as much of it as you want or not have. The other direction you could go is just enabling your Windows keypad uh, to come up anytime that you tap on an input field. Um,
right.
I actually had to tell Windows not to do that because it was convoluting
Interfering with the keypad you did want people
yeah,
to use.
yeah. And you introduce more things when you use the Windows keypad. I mean, a lot of times it's a full-blown keyboard, or if you say I just want the keypad and not the full keyboard, um, there are keys right up built into that where you can switch between keyboards or do other things. There's Windows keys. They can bring up the start menu and things of that
Right.
nature. So that's why I stayed away from that with this. So,
Right.
you know, you just have to make choices as to, which way you want to go. I mean, you can configure as much of a keyboard as you want with this, with that modification. We won't go into that here. But um, I think if you look at the previous videos on where we talked about the keypad, adding that to the self check, you can look through the instructions on that and what I did to set that up and make some modifications. It's pretty straightforward. It's easier to edit outside of the jQuery window because you can uh, you know lay your code out to where it's more easy to read.
Make it a little more readable. Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
familiar with that process.
that's one thing that it's still annoying is if I'm editing jQuery. Where did it go? Oh, if I'm editing jQuery here, it's all got to be inline. Unfortunately, I can't lay out my HTML in a way that is more readable. So
Uh, Actually, there's a workaround for that. Maybe
you'll
that'll
have
be
to,
another video.
yes, you'll have to teach me that because anytime I've tried to do that, it breaks the jQuery. So
So on that top line in that jQuery append, go over to the first to where true, and you've got that right bracket.
mhm.
So go ahead and put a single quote and then a space and then a plus symbol and then a space
Ew.
and then another single quote. There you go.
So if I were to put this line on the
Yep.
next line, it's more things to break if I forget a quote or a plus somewhere. But yes, okay, good to
Yeah.
know. I would like this to be a little bit more readable. It does make the code longer, but it would be easier to read and easier to add to and take away from if it were laid out better.
Yeah, I have quite a few things that I do. I use the single quote space plus space quote, single quote to make it more readable, and which makes it easier to edit.
See,
And a
you
lot of
taught me
times what I
something.
will do is I will put that into an editor, like I'll put that into VS Code and write it all the way I want, and with the pluses and the single quotes in there to make sure that it works right. And then when I want to put it back into the I'll use search replace to get all the quote space plus space quotes out of there to put it all back into one line.
Nice.
So a helpful editing tip here at the end of the video.
Yeah. Well, I hope that folks will find this helpful. Um, I like this. I will say, I shared this with a few people to look at, um, and one person was saying that they went to our test screen here, and the focus wasn't working. So I haven't mastered the focus completely. Um, so if somebody has something that they could add to this, they can feel free to reach out to me or to send comments in the video. I would love to improve things so that it's a more dependable. I've tried this in Chrome. I've tried this in Firefox. I believe I've tried it in Edge. I didn't have any problems. I wasn't able to replicate the problem that the other person was having with the focus issue. Uh, but if someone has a better idea on how to maintain that focus, I'd love to hear about it. I mean, it's a work in progress, and what I've got so far has been working in production for our patrons, which is really nice. It's been carefree for our staff and carefree for our patrons.
And it's your patrons are familiar with it. I can tell you that for sure, because when we logged into this Zoom to make this recording and you brought this up on the screen, I thought, oh, he's going to talk about that third-party self-check. Because it looks exactly like what you used to have in your library for third-party self-check.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't tell the difference until you said this is Koha.
Yep. So I'm really happy with it. And like I said, again, you can brand this however you want. It doesn't have to look like this. This is just a graphic, which is really nice. I went into Canva and laid out all the pieces and exported the graphic and put it in Koha. So
cool.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. And again, if you have any comments or suggestions, feedback, or or questions, feel free to reach out on Mattermost to us. You can find us on Mattermost, or you can comment on the video. We check the videos regularly to see what people have to say. But until next time,
we'll see you all later.
bye.